the last big game of the season. Got to break it down. It's Big Game Breakdown. All right, so big game breakdown today. We will do some of our best bets, sort of the locks version, Thursday, as we normally would. Monday's show, the day of the game, we'll do our usual props-a-palooza, just kind of spray the board with everything we got, as many different ways that you can attack this. So as we look at the nitty-gritty of the matchup, Danny, what's lingering to you right now in terms of Ohio State Notre Dame?
So I think when you have a favorite like this, I kind of look at it from the underdog standpoint. Like, how does Notre Dame not get run through the way that Tennessee and Oregon got run through, right? Like, so I'm trying to look at this. That's almost like naturally where my lens goes to, like when I'm looking and previewing this matchup. And I think there's a couple things that are like Notre Dame's recipe. One, I think there is some similarities between Notre Dame and Michigan. The type of athlete, the type of game plan, and Notre Dame has better quarterback play. You know, they've gotten better, just play around the board, but similar style of team defensively, defensive driven, pretty good along the defensive line. So I think from a matchup standpoint, that kind of helps Notre Dame. You figure out that, and Michigan laid out a game plan where you can kind of slug it out with them. And then Texas, I thought Texas showed a game plan that you don't have to get torched in your secondary by Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka and company, and you can slow this juggernaut down somewhat, kind of like we talked about. Now, after the first drive of the game, it was like, here goes Ohio State right through Texas like a knife through butter, and then Texas kind of settled in, rebounded, did a good job getting pressures, did a good job not giving up the big play, get a good job helping on Jeremiah Smith, allowing him only one catch, and kind of playing a little bit more of that bend, don't break. Now, Notre Dame, their thing is, I do think they like to play more man coverage, which I would caution against as a secondary. Even with the type of talent they have, it's going to be really hard to match up across the board with what Ohio State runs. So I think for Notre Dame, like the game plan is we want to stay true to our identity on the offensive side of the ball. We want to try to run it. We're going to run our quarterback. We're going to not ask him to do a ton, but be very efficient. Don't turn the ball over. And then defensively, we want to pick our spots to be aggressive, to confuse Will Howard. But I would tell them to go watch the game film of Texas and try to take a page out of that one as far as some of the coverages that were played and making sure they stay in front of you and don't get behind you.
So, I think a lot of us are assuming, and there's probably good reason for it, that the Irish are going to play a lot more split safety coverage like they did against Indiana and like they also did, especially against USC, like the two teams that probably had the best receivers that they played this year. I would think Louisville would be an argument too with Bell and Brooks and those guys. But what if they don't? Like what if they're like, hey, dance with what brung you? We think we're the best man coverage team in the nation. What if we don't play that split safety stuff quite as well? Right? Like, what if we play the style of plan that basically allows us to maybe have a shot to hold Ohio State to like a sick low number, which our offense might need if we're actually going to win the game? What if the style of play that is required of the Irish to win this game is also the same plan that would potentially facilitate them getting blown out?
Right? Like just go big.
What if they just try to man up Jeremiah and Boot? Okay, like there's some chance that Howard misses those guys, right? Like if they play their normal stuff, it's going to be a lot of they press the boundary a ton. It's going to be a lot of probably back shoulders to Jeremiah and some go balls depending on how they're going to play it. What if they're just off, right? Howard, though, I think Ohio State will have a good game plan probably for him to keep it pretty simple. I know we talked on yesterday's show that he screwed up one of those zone reads in the first quarter against Texas. And I mean, Judkins is probably going to go 60 yards if he hands the ball off. I think you could see a lot more empty out of Ohio State in this game, but not necessarily empty 5 wide. Like I could see them starting out in 12, and they use very little 12 personnel against Texas. And I think part of that was probably the speed of the Texas backers. Like when you go back and watch that, I think the speed of the Texas backers and the speed of the Michigan backers they had a lot of similarities there. So I wonder if that's why Ohio State decided to spread them out more. Now, granted, the other argument there might be, well, they just watched Clemson and Arizona State operate out of 10 and 11 personnel almost exclusively and have a lot of success. So they wanted to see, if they could do it too. But I think if I'm Ohio State, I think I might just run 12 personnel and try to spread Notre Dame out a little more and go a little more 11-man run game with Howard to where he's not reading as much. It's just QB counter, QB bash, some play action off that type of stuff. You can run your jet stuff out of that pretty well. But it does take, obviously, Henderson and Judkins out of the game a little bit, and those are some of the best players on that offense. Let me see other stuff from the notes here. How does Notre Dame decide to play the screen game? Ohio's screen game has been really good in the playoffs. It's explosives off it, and then later on they've kind of run some the fake bubble stuff and go, and they've had some success with that too. I do like how the Irish they play a boatload of man coverage, and they play a lot of cover one, but they disguise it pretty well.
Yeah, that's the thing is if
the way they get to it. Yeah.
You don't have to necessarily sack Will Howard to make him make a mistake. And that's where it's got to be Al Golden and sort of this defense all being together and understanding what they're trying to do so that they can be able to get him throwing the ball to the wrong place.
If you're Day and you're sitting down Chip Kelly and you're sitting down Jim Knowles, I think you're Jim, what do you think you can hold him to? 14, 17, somewhere around there.
20.
Chip, as long as your offense, as long as our special team doesn't allow some kind of defensive score, which I think Notre Dame leads the nation in non-offensive points scored. So that they have had a lot of that this year, and that's to their credit. They do a great job on special teams. They disguise well on defense despite leading the country in man coverage, which is pretty impressive to be the leading man coverage team and also generate that many turnovers. I think that speaks to how well they disguise how they get to some of their stuff. And I think if you're Chip and you're hearing Jim Knowles say, all right, we can hold him to 17. This is hypothetical, obviously. Ryan's okay, we can score 24. We've scored 21 and 17 on these guys the last 2 years without Jeremiah. How do we score 24 without Will jacking this game up for us? If he doesn't throw it away, we're going to win the ballgame.
But that, to me, would make me a little bit nervous because I think that's probably the mindset going into Michigan.
Right.
No, that's where the similarities to how does Notre Dame win this game? It's if Ohio State comes in, they're a little bit different, or they try to not expose Will Howard, or they try to, just keep it and trust their defense.
Oh, we're going to run it on first down. We're going to be super conservative. Now we're done in second and long. Oh, no, Will missed the guy. Now we're in third and long going up against a defense that can bring a lot of pressure from different places.
I don't disagree with that at all, but in the playoffs, they have been a little more screens and bombs on early downs.
Correct. They have.
Fairly safe. If you throw the pick on the bomb, it's kind of like a punt.
Right.
I think what you probably see more is, first, second down didn't work. It's 3rd and 8. Hey, man, a punt in our defense against Notre Dame's offense is not the worst thing in the world. So, be smart about this. I wonder if you see more of their early down shots like they did against Tennessee and Oregon.
So Ohio State had one of its worst statistical rushing performances of the season against Texas. Notre Dame's run defense had one of its worst statistical performances of the season against Penn State. Who comes back? Who comes back to the middle? And what's there to be made when it's Ohio State and again, not tricking it up, not quarterback run. You've got two dogs there. Was it the youth pastor and the boy with grills who yells at you the whole time? Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, the perfect combination for a backfield. And then, a Notre Dame run defense that's been pretty solid.
So I think if you look at this, a lot of that Penn State rush success came early.
Right. They buckled him down in the second half.
Because they added more guys to the fit. And they said, okay, all right, we can't just get bullied for 60 minutes. If you can pass on us, do it. I think initially Penn State was pretty worried about, I think Notre Dame was pretty worried initially that Penn State was going to scheme up stuff on them. Right. And they just ultimately couldn't.
Yeah.
As far as the wide open guys. I know Aller missed the one, but no receiver. He missed 2.
Oh, no, I thought Danny had to go. I was giving up.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
I have there's an update to my schedule, which has been pushed back, so we're good to go now.
Okay.
Our producer, Jack, is in the doghouse right now because it was you're on, you're off. then it was drawn. It was Quinn Ewers breaking news, but apparently they did enough in the last 15 minutes where it got some extra time.
Hey, remember the key words are in the moment, right?
Right.
Those are 3 key words in the moment.
That's right.
Sorry, bud. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Can they afford to put more guys in the fit against Ohio State?
When it's Jeremiah Smith and not Amari Evans and Harrison Wallace.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
that is a bit of a difference there.
Danny, what else is sort of lingering about the matchup?
How much does Notre Dame use tempo to their advantage? The time of possession. I don't think they're going to be any rush at all, but do they go super slow? You got to kind of be careful with that because you don't want to get out of what you normally do. Like you want to stay in your rhythm, but also I do think you want to be conscientious about not giving the ball back to Ohio State. And I think you guys nailed it with Al Golden. Like, I don't think they're going to sit back in a 2 deep or a 4 deep, like a umbrella coverage all game.
Yeah.
You pick your spots. And there are going to be times when I guarantee you Al Golden makes his call and is like talking on the headsets to coaches and like, this is it, boys. Like, this is the one. Like, this is where we're going to take it. We're going to take our shot. And we're either going to come up with a sack or we're going to come up with a big hit or we're putting our corners on an island. And those plays are whenever you have to take your chances and trust your guys. And Will Howard, does he step up and make it, or does he get sacked, or does he have to scramble? Like, that to me is going to be probably the biggest determinant of the game.
Can Notre Dame block Ohio State?
Not the whole game, but that's the advantage of having Riley Leonard. He wasn't clean every snap against Penn State, especially late when they were coming down that second half. I mean, he can scramble. And sometimes it's just a scramble back to the line of scrimmage or it's a scramble for a throwaway, but that is a lot better than an 8-yard loss and a sack. So like and then you asked about the running games. That to me will be really interesting to see. Like Jeremiah Love, who had this kind of resurgence all of a sudden, like when he found some adrenaline in that game, being able to drag guys to the goal line. How about Aeneas Williams too, the young back who provided such a spark in that, and they were throwing the ball to him, catching the ball. Like they showed some things that they can do to generate offense where, I think a lot of that is aware of we're not going to be able to line up with our offensive line, this mixed unit with guys who have been hurt and filling in patch and pieces. Denbrock has done a really good job of generating offense and generating big plays.
Cotton Bowl was a little bit of a ref show. It was our beloved ACC officiating crew that did the octolateral Duke Miami, that also did the Hail Mary that wasn't Virginia Tech Miami. Danny, you know what the officiating crew is for this national championship game?
Tell me it's not the ACC again.
It's Big 12, right?
No. It's usually is the Big 12 of the ACC.
SEC?
Yes.
Oh, I got to get a picture with these guys.
Nice.
Oh, I'm getting a picture now. Pre-game.
You got to bring in the crew. You got to bring in the crew that doesn't have a team
call.
in the game. SEC officials, because no SEC teams made it. Oh, hey, don't worry, Southeastern Conference. You'll be represented by the Stripes. I would love, because we're talking about all this stuff. I don't want to see a ref show. I don't want to see the PI offense work. I don't. But that might end up being an X factor.
So if they let them play, it benefits the Irish a ton.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The PI offense to me is like they're being really handsy in man coverage with a super talented Smith or Ibuka, and they're not even making catches, but Ohio State's able to march the ball down and Quinshawn runs it in from 7 yards out. Like that's a path that I could see happening.
Who are the best running quarterbacks Notre Dame has faced this year?
All right, I've got him pulled up right. Haynes King.
Yeah.
Was Haynes maybe
Did
a
he
little
know
bit?
he didn't play that game?
Right?
He was out.
I remember because I think that was one where I gave out Georgia Tech and then was pissed, and there was
Because he was scratched last minute.
That's why my picks sucked this year. That game.
That's it. Blake Horvath, Bryson Daly.
Didn't Horvath get knocked out in the first quarter?
He had the thumb injury. He kept turning it over.
Ethan Hampton did have 5 carries for 21 yards. Northern Illinois' quarterback.
I guess my point here is, yes, there is some chance they decide, like, we're like, dance to what brung you. we're going to play a lot of man coverage. If we get roasted, we get roasted, and they might. But how do you account for the QB's legs in that? Because even though Howard has not been crazy mobile this year, I think he
can hurt you.
Would he be the most mobile quarterback they have faced in an offense that's not Army Navy?
I don't know, man. Way that Will Howard just tripped and fell, I believe he slid down my mobile quarterback rankings. He's got a big body, and he can.
I guess Tyler Shuck can run a little bit. Maeva's not like a total statue.
No. Maeva had a couple rushing scores late in the season for the Trojans as well.